Oh, there you go. All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Leilani Münter, for being our fifth revolutionary. And you are effectively the first lady for the series. So thank you for agreeing to join the Tesla Owners Club of Orange County in our Meet Revolutionaries event. Um, we are so glad to see you here and have you be able to spend the time with us to talk talk Racing Extinction, talk about you, and really just get to know you better. It was a year ago today that you had spoken to the Tesla Owners Club Leadership Conference in LA.
Was it
When
exactly a year ago today?
Yeah, I was tweeting out a stream of photos because I'm missing seeing people and stuff, and that was one of those events where people really got to see people. And it's funny, I didn't plan on it being a year ago today, but it just ended up being that way. And we quite a bit of us pledged to spend time and talk about this and view it if we haven't viewed it yet, or get our clubs involved. So we're so glad that I'm usually on time and I'm usually last minute on time. So this is just so on point with how I am as a person. Um, so it's been
Well,
awesome. But for those that don't know Leilani, I was just going to read the introduction off your webpage. Unless
okay.
you want to just talk about yourself. Either way you want to do it. I'm
No, you
perfectly
can do it. I'm
okay.
sick of
Well,
talking about myself.
so Leilani Münter is a biology graduate turned race car driver and environmental activist. I don't think you've updated this because if I remember correctly, now your focus now is documentary films, right? You're looking at making documentary films more and more so. So, and then
Yep.
more, she believes it is essential for humans to adapt and evolve the way we are living in a sustainable way that does not destroy the world around us. Leilani is an advocate for renewable energy, solar power, electric cars, plant-based diet, and animal rights. She sits on the board of three nonprofits: Oceanic Preservation Society, Empowered by Light, and EarthX Film. Leilani is also an ambassador for Rico Barry's Dolphin Project and a patron of Population Matters. Leilani was featured in the 2015 documentary film Racing Extinction, which we're talking about today. Leilani wants our future to be cleaner and kinder world. And on a personal note, I know when I was nervous at driving you were one of the first. You were the second race car driver that I've had in my car. A year ago, when I drove you back to the hotel, I was like, man, I wonder if she's judging how I'm driving because she's a professional driver. So, and we got to talking about being child free by choice, and how that's important, and to both my better half and I, as I told you, our nieces have joined us on here as well, and that doesn't mean that you don't get to spoil the heck out of the family that your siblings choose to have, and that's kind of the more fun thing to do. And I think you believe in the same philosophy that I do on that, and I appreciate that to find like-minded people as well. And with that, Leilani, if you want to start with some words about Racing Extinction or anything you want to talk about, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's an honor to join you guys on this Saturday, and actually, you bringing up the population thing just last night. It's funny. I watched a new documentary that just came out. That's from David Attenborough. It's on Netflix, and it's called A Life on This Planet. And I was so happy to see both David Attenborough and I, as well as Jane Goodall, are patrons of the group you mentioned, Population Matters, which is out of the UK. And they try and raise awareness, basically that all of the environmental issues that we are facing are really amplified and accelerated by our numbers. So, of course, consumption is one of the problems, but it's also our sheer numbers. So, saying that our numbers of people doesn't matter is a little bit like saying, the area of a rectangle is determined only by its length and not by its width. It's both the consumption that humans are doing as well as what our numbers are that dictate our impact on the planet. So I was lucky enough to have a professor at UC San Diego where I earned my biology degree. He was actually my biochemistry professor. But one day we came into class, and it was kind of one of those, you know, big kind of stadium style seating where there's 300 students in a class. It's a very big college. And he just told us to close our books and said, I'm going to talk about population today, and showed us a short film about human population. And I saw that, you know, since I've been on the planet, I was born in 1974, the population has nearly doubled from 4 to approaching 8 billion. So that was something that has been an issue that I've always been thinking about in the back of my head since I was in college. And it was something that I feel like we didn't really address in Racing Extinction. That was the one thing that, you know, I feel like it was sort of subtly implied in some of the visuals, but there was never an actual discussion about population. So I was really happy to see, you know, I think David Attenborough is such a wonderful voice. He's so well respected by so many generations, and his voice carries a lot of weight. So watching his doc last night was encouraging to me, that he addressed, you know, not only population throughout, but how, as our numbers have gone up, how biodiversity and, you know, wild places have been decreasing as our numbers increase. And he also talked about plant-based diet, which was great to see. You know, David Attenborough's 93 years old, and he refers to this film as being sort of his witness statement. And I just thought it was beautiful. So I know we're here to talk about Racing Extinction, but that one's sort of fresh on my mind just because I just saw it for the first time last night. Racing Extinction we worked on for 5 years. I started working on it in 2012, and then the film aired for the first time in December of 2015 on the Discovery Channel. And I just want to let everybody know, if anybody is a teacher or knows any teachers out there anywhere around the globe, we have actually made Racing Extinction free for all teachers to show to their students from kindergarten through 12th grade. And there's also free lesson plans that the teachers can download for free on our website. So you just go to racingextinction.com, and then select education in the menu bar. And it makes it very easy for teachers because the lesson plans are already written out. That was something that Discovery Education worked on with us when we first launched Racing Extinction. So that's a free source, and we've actually had over 50,000 teachers download the curriculum, and over 2.3 million students complete the curriculum. And I think obviously now with the pandemic and all of us moving to these sort of online, having to teach people through a computer, I imagine it must be very difficult for teachers. So this is something great where it's very easy for the teacher to, you know, not have to write a lesson plan and have everything written out for them. And it's for all different age groups. So if any of you know teachers, please spread the word about that.
Thank you, Leilani. Sorry, my phone was ringing, so I have to mute myself before the phone ringing noise goes in. So, like I told you, it's yeah, the assumption is obviously everyone had homework. We had hoped when we had made this commitment that we would have this great showing. We were looking for movie theaters to do this in, and you know, I think EarthX and some of the clubs are doing something next week. But as I've told many people around on the calls, I've been really conservative when it comes to the COVID-19 thing, and I've been home for 212 days straight, with the exception of, as I told Mark before the call, curbside pickups, where I use a power trunk to have people put my purchases in the back of the car, close it. So I've had glass and metal between me and people. So, you know, I just figured I tend to think I'm young, but I'm not as young as I am. And I like to think that I'm thin, but I'm probably not as thin as I am. So following that, and I appreciate you saying that. So as I mentioned to the group here, Jamie's put some stats on here, and you were talking, he was mentioning while you were mentioning your part about not only has the population doubled, but more than half of humanity's carbon emissions for all history have happened since '74, and he's posted a nice
more
or
than
a scary
70%. More than 70% of human total carbon emissions have happened since you were born, Leilani.
Wow.
Which is insane. That's how bad it is, and it just keeps getting worse.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
I have to say the Attenborough documentary, you know, it started when he was a boy, and throughout the film they're kind of showing what the population of humans were, what the parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is, and what percentage of the earth is still wild. And so that's a card that keeps popping up throughout his journey, and you see it start when he was a little boy and go through to, you know, present day 2020. And it's really effective. You know, I think we tried to get a lot of that across in Racing Extinction, but we didn't blatantly address population. And I think people are oftentimes just, you know, they don't want to bring it up because it's an uncomfortable conversation. So they just kind of sweep it under the rug and don't address it. But you know, at what point do we not start talking about it? So I was really happy to see his doc address that. And I kind of wish that had been something that came up in Racing Extinction, but.
Well, going to the film, one of the things, like, you know, obviously, watched it several times already, but you know, your part, at least on screen.
I think we're losing Dennis.
You froze, Dennis.
So we got someone. Okay, the recording hadn't started.
Oh,
I thought,
you're
but
back.
You're back.
But okay, good. Sorry, did I drop off?
Yeah.
Was I frozen in some weird way?
We lost both your audio and your visual also froze, so you have to go back to the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, we missed your question.
All right, so like I said, you in the movie, you know, like I said, you're in the more hopeful. We're taking action. We've already decided what to do. One of the things that struck me was obviously your inspiration, or at least inspiration in the film of creating 006, where Addy Gill in his van projecting to shut down the hump. Did you ever take any time? I assume you met everybody that's been on that, right? And so my question is, have you ever taken Addy Gill in 006, and you know, and what did he think of 006 compared to what he had on his van?
Oh yeah, you know, I didn't personally get to take Addy on for a ride in 006. I don't know if anyone else did. I mean, I was pretty much the only person driving it, so I assume he's never been in it.
Okay.
But I'm sure, you know, I know he saw the film and obviously knew that he was sort of the inspiration. And it was funny when Louis first revealed to me what my job was going to be in the next film, because I had actually gotten really excited about the Oceanic Preservation Society's first film, which is called The Cove, and won the Academy Award in 2010 and is actually still to this day the most winning documentary of all time. And that's how I first got involved with OPS. And we were lighting up the Empire State Building. This is in 2011. I had gotten Tony Malkin, who's also in Racing Extinction. He's the owner of the Empire State Building. I had gotten him to watch The Cove. And then he reached out and said, what can I do to help raise awareness about this film? And the thing that we decided to do was to light up the Empire State Building in red to sort of signify the cove that ran red with the blood of the dolphins. And, you know, he was really great. They put a whole, you know, thing on the front page of the Empire website about the cove, and it was read for a whole weekend. And Luis Ahoyas, the director of Racing Extinction in the Cove, and Rick O'Barry, who's the hero from the Cove, we all went to flip the switch together on the Empire. And it was when we were on the roof, you know, of a adjacent building looking at the Empire lit up, that I kind of brought up, you know, the Cove reached a lot of people that are already fans of the ocean. They're already environmentalists, we're, you know, in some way you're sort of preaching to the choir, but that if we really wanted to make a difference with the film, we needed to get people that are in the mainstream and, you know, buying tickets to SeaWorld. So I had the idea to take a race car to raise the funds, to take a race car with the Cove on the hood of the car, to talk to the NASCAR fans about the Cove and dolphin parks. And, you know, significant because SeaWorld is just down the street in Orlando, only an hour or so away from Daytona. And it was at that race that Louis said was filming and said, I actually have a job for you in our next documentary. And then when he showed me what it was, you know, it was actually just a white van with a, you know, the image they had mocked up was like a white van with a projector strapped to the top of it. And I was like, oh no, like we have to do something way cooler than that. You know, it needs to be electric and it needs to be a cool car. So then I took Louis to SpaceX to meet Elon, and we kind of told him what we wanted to do with the car. And that sort of started the journey down the road with 006. But it took us a long time. I mean, I know in the film you're kind of seeing it happen in the course of like 30 seconds, but all of those those edits that we made to the car, the projector, the paint changing color, the FLIR camera going into the frunk, the license plate changing to a blank license plate, all those things took, you know, years to do. And in the film you see it sort of happen in like 30 seconds, but it was actually a big portion of my life. But, you know, when you're editing a documentary and it can only be 90 minutes long and you've been filming for 5 years, you know, the vast majority of footage that you get that you love, just it has to end up on the cutting room floor because there's just not enough room.
So is there anything that you can share now that the statute of limitations have probably run out on any sort of violations you may have had in capturing some of that footage with 006? You know, why would you need a blurring of the license plate or a color changing car unless there were some secret agency type of things you guys were doing?
Yeah, we didn't get into that in the film. I thought we would, but we really, you know, I think it was just, again, a thing of a limit in time. But the whole point, obviously, was that I was projecting onto places where we didn't have permission to project, and I wasn't really welcome. One of the scenes in the film where you'll see that I was projecting the Shell oil logo onto an oil refinery, and then the Shell oil logo turns into one of the real shells from the ocean that's being dissolved by ocean acidification. That was on a plant outside of LA, and we, you know, obviously when people discovered what we were doing, they would call the police and security would be on us. And that was the whole reason behind the car changing colors. So when I was projecting onto the places that weren't going to like me, I would have the paint on. Right, so when the security is describing me to the police, they're describing a bright blue car with, you know, it's got all these colors on it, and it's got this big projector, and they're, you know, illegally putting imagery onto our buildings. And then they would call the police, and I would simply, you know, turn off the paint, and with the flip of a switch would just look like a gray Tesla. And we'd pull the projector in, and in that particular case, I remember we were driving away, and we, you know, just in the nick of time, like it was probably a 30-second time frame that I was pulling out of where I was projecting from. And, you know, as we were driving away, there were all these cop cars coming towards me on the same road, but of course they were looking for a car that I didn't look like anymore, so they just drove right past us. So,
well, too bad that this was filmed a decade ago, or almost a decade ago, because, you know, nowadays, if you're filming in around LA using a Tesla, people are going to have a hard time finding you now than when they were back then, right? I mean, we had more of the crowd could come in, and you know, we could do some funny, was it Smoking the Bandit kind of stuff or something, right? To try to help you.
Yeah, that's true. It was, it was amazing how I could hide in plain sight, but mostly because of the paint. The paint was the most effective thing because they were looking for a blue car. Um, and we projected onto like the Koch brothers buildings. We took that car all over the United States, and actually the final scene of the movie where you'll see I'm projecting onto Canyonlands in Utah. That shot was on my way home from the Empire State Building, so I projected onto the Empire for that big scene at the end, and then I drove the car all the way back to San Francisco. So it was a 5,000-mile road trip, and I kind of zigzagged around the country and did projections on the way home. And that was one of the spots where we got there and just thought, oh, we have to stay here and do a time lapse of like, the stars coming up and projecting onto the side of the canyon. So we ended up staying there. And I had an alarm. I had an alarm going off every 20 minutes all night long to check and make sure that the time lapse was still working. So I didn't get any sleep that night. I always think of that when I see that shot. But it ended up being the final shot of the Tesla and the final shot of the film.
Well, I know that I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that our good friend Mark, who's on this call right now, if you ever stop off at St. George and don't say hi to Mark, it's he would take it as he'd probably be a lot nicer than I would. I'm like, well, I would be offended if I didn't say hi to Mark out there. He's always I get Starbucks and I get Mark when I'm out there. So just a plug for him.
Excellent. Yeah, I see you all the time on Twitter. Thanks for all of your support on there.
Yeah, but so
my pleasure.
Once again, guys, feel free to speak up. That's why we have full participant seats here. So, how fast can you drive models 006? And I had some questions I put up, but before that, you had mentioned that people are looking at the color, and obviously it changes. So, was the color of 006 originally dolphin gray, and was that on purpose, or porpoise? I guess.
Oh God!
Bad joke for a guy that's not a dad. Sorry. Feel free to groan, folks. I'm here all day.
It was 006 was actually originally black, but when the electroluminescent paint went on the car, it was actually just a coincidence that the electroluminescent paint that it turned out when it was off looked like the dolphin gray. But in fact, underneath that paint, she's black. And there is we did release some like behind the scenes footage after Racing Extinction came out where it shows me go and actually pick up 006 and drive her off of the Tesla factory. And it was funny, like we got onto the freeway, and as soon as I got on the freeway outside of the Tesla factory, obviously I was punching it because it was fun and we were so excited that we finally had, the car we wanted. And immediately had a cop with lights that he didn't pull me over, but he turned on his lights and cut me off. And I was pretty happy I didn't get pulled over within like a minute of driving her.
Well, you wouldn't be the first Tesla person to take a car out within the first few minutes and say hi to the police.
It catches you by surprise because the first time you drive like a really fast electric car, you're going 20 miles an hour faster than you think you are because the sensation of speed and acceleration just like aren't there. Like all the things you normally attach to, the sound and the shifting and all that stuff, you don't go through any of that. So you're at 80 miles an hour and you're like, wait, how did I get here? I didn't even shift gears.
Yeah, or 100 miles an hour. I mean, I had that happen once. Yeah. When I got my Model S in 2013 and we were going down the freeway, my husband was in the passenger seat, and it was one of these places on the freeway where it was, 2 lanes very slow, and then it opens up to 4 lanes as you get closer to Charlotte. And so when it opens up, everybody kind of takes off, and I took off, and then I just heard, my husband in the passenger seat say, honey? and I looked down and I was going like 105, and I was like, oh, whoops, I didn't even realize. Because yeah, I have gotten a few speeding tickets in my own personal Model S, but now I try and sort of, I feel like I got a lot of it out of my system on the racetrack with the race cars, and now I just like to get up to speed fast, and I try to not do anything that's going to get me into trouble.
Wow, I thought that you'd get a pass from the cops, especially in North Carolina, knowing that you're a professional race driver. It's like, yeah, how many of them are fans that don't know that you're a race car driver, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been pulled over by cops that knew who I was and were like, I'm a big fan. I just read the article about you in Esquire magazine, and then still gave me a ticket. So it doesn't always work. Sometimes you think it's going to work because they recognize you and you're, thinking you're going to get off with a warning, and nope, it doesn't always work like that. So I've learned my lesson over the years.
That's awesome. Anybody who has questions, do put your hand up or start speaking. That's fine. I'm trying to find some. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Leilani, I got to meet you at Fully Charged earlier this year, and just wanted to know, wondering how you got involved with Fully Charged. And I know you did a lot of work while you were there, especially with Robert having to leave, and filling up some of that gap. And also, will you be at the next one?
Yeah, so I think they just reached out to us and said we were actually supposed to film an episode of Fully Charged when they were over in the US, and we were still kind of working on that, brainstorming ideas of what we were going to film when of course the pandemic hit. I didn't know, are they doing something in person, or is it a remote meeting?
I think April next year. They've decided not to do it during Super Bowl Sunday. Is the targeted restart of the live events, and once again, Tesla followed Fully Charged into Austin, so I guess now they're going to do another one in Austin, Texas as well. And for club members, I'll make sure to get us the discount code again that we used last time, and hope to see more of you guys there. But that's where it is. But it's not at the same location. I think they're doing it on the other side of town, closer to where the Gigafactory would be. That's what I remember in talking with the guys.
Yeah, I don't know that I guess it depends on how things are going, but I have friends that, I know people that have died, and I also have friends that have recovered from coronavirus but are having severe neurological side effects, months and months later. Young, healthy, runs marathons, and is definitely not normal. So I don't know that I'm ready to do anything in person. I don't know when I will feel comfortable doing that sort of thing, but I've basically been home since March. I had to make one important work trip for my upcoming documentary film that I'm working on with OPS. But yeah, I feel like I would be happy doing remote things right now, but the way things are going, and honestly around North Carolina, like we just had our highest number of cases yesterday that we've recorded since the beginning of the pandemic. So we're definitely going in the wrong direction. So I would have to play it by ear. But I think I'd be happy to remote in. But for the time being, knowing so many people affected by the virus, some that didn't make it, I'm not ready to sort of do an event like that.
Okay. So that ties in actually to one of my questions is, when is your next film? And is there anything you can share about it?
Yeah, so the next film, I've been working on it for over a year now with OPS. We've already been doing some filming. I actually left, when I came home because of the pandemic, that was on March 13th that I got on a plane and flew home. But I was actually editing. Our offices are at Skywalker Ranch, and I was supposed to be there editing a lot of footage that we had just filmed, and you know, things were starting to get dicey, and I thought, oh, I don't want to get, I don't want to enter a lockdown and be not home. So on the 13th, I just, you know, decided to basically get on the next flight and fly home. Our films typically take 4 to 5 years to complete from, I mean, that's how long Racing Extinction took and The Cove. I would like to finish this faster than that, but the reality is I haven't been able to film since March. I don't know when that's going to be possible to pick up filming again, so I feel like it's sort of been put on the back burner, and I can do research and I can talk to subjects, but I don't want to film my interviews over a Zoom link or anything like that. It's, you know, Louis, our director, is a former National Geographic photographer, and as you know from Racing Extinction, he really has a beautiful eye, and those are things that would be really hard to do if we're not there in person to film. So I've been looking at, you know, can we film outside? The problem is a lot of places have 14-day quarantines, you know, for when you arrive. So some of my subjects are in New York, and, you know, we would have to quarantine for 2 weeks before we're allowed to go ahead and do anything. So that's making it really difficult. But the film is essentially about, it's about existential threats to humanity. It's about humans becoming an interplanetary species, the Fermi paradox, the Great Filter. The working title of the film is The Great Filter. And, you know, it's been in the works for a while, but obviously, like, I can't film right now, so I just don't know. But I mean, I would assume it's going to be a few years. But I would like to do it faster, but it's just like everybody else in the world that travels for work, you know, it makes it nearly impossible for me to do my job. Otherwise, I'd be out there filming right now.
Sounds like something that you know, takes time and you know, we appreciate the end product. One of the things that I was trying to get to earlier that I lost my train of thought was, you know, obviously, you know, as I said, you know, when you look at the film, it sets the case, and then here's what we're going to do, and you're in the here's what we're going to do part. And, you know, it's always, every time I watch it, it's always difficult at the very beginning, you know, seeing that little bird, I forgot the name of it, that trying to do its song and not hearing back from its mate. I can only imagine the, you know, the loneliness that bird feels. But more importantly, your colleagues that have joined in, like Sean and Paul, right, who go do the undercover stuff that they do. You know, it's so, that shot of the fins on the roof in Hong Kong is, you know, haunts me, right? Every time I watch, it's like, you know, and, you know, look, I'm an omnivore, so I, you know, like you know, almost every time that I have my meatless days, I try to tweet you with my start. Oh wait, start with one thing, guys. Remember, you know, try to do that at least, because, you know, at least help with all the other ways that are on it. I mean, how? You know, first of all, you're a more public face, so obviously it's harder to be undercover. But how difficult do you think, or how difficult is it from those members of your cast of being able to keep a straight face when they're faced with such atrocities, if you will? Have you discussed that with your fellow cast members and because that seems very difficult for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a part of their job, basically, right? They're trying to fool people into trusting them to get into these places where we can get this imagery. You know, I don't know if everybody's seen The Cove, but I'd highly recommend seeing that as well. There's a lot of undercover stuff that happens in The Cove. You know, that was really kind of hiding in the woods, and we were planting, you know, cameras that were hidden inside fake birds' nests and fake rocks. And, you know, OPS did such an amazing job with that film. Obviously, once Racing Extinction came out, I think it's got to be more difficult for Paul and for Sean to do these kinds of things because they could be recognized now. you know, and Louis was doing disguises when he was going out and doing undercover stuff because he was already seen quite a bit in the Cove. So I don't think they felt like Louis could just go as himself and you know, be able to hide. So in some cases, Louis was putting on disguises where he was wearing prosthetics and things to try and look different. I never had to do anything like that because I was in the car. But yeah, it would certainly be difficult for me to sort of infiltrate any sort of illegal operation and not have some sort of, you know, I guess I could do a wig and yeah, there's certain things I could do, but yeah, for Racing Extinction, since I was always in the car, I mean, my job was really just get us out of Dodge before we get into trouble. And I did get pulled over. I mean, there was a couple occasions in New York, but we never got in any sort of trouble. So it worked out well. I mean, that's why I was hired, right? Is you're going to get us out of trouble before we get into trouble. And we always had, you know, meeting spots. So when I would be doing a projection, we would discuss, okay, if shit hits the fan, where are we going to meet? Because we're all going to take off in different directions. So we would set up, you know, a spot where we would meet and then a backup spot if that spot wasn't a good place. And it, you know, it worked out, thankfully. But I did tell Louis, you know, if I end up in jail, I hope you have bail money for me. And the one part where it was a little bit sketchy was when we were projecting in Washington, D.C., because I had the police pull me over. You know, I had that big projector on the back, and especially with the big lens, it can look like a weapon. So the police pulled me over and said, you know, you it looks an awful lot like you have a weapon on the back of your car, and you really need to like drive away from the state capitol right now. So, you know, I kind of told Louis, you know, my commitment to this movie ends when I start getting shot at. But thankfully that never happened.
Well, we're glad that Stuart makes the mention here that you were the getaway driver. So good job.
Yes, thank you. It worked out okay.
I think Jeff has a good question in chat.
Yeah, Jeff. Feel free, you want to unmute and ask your question, or do you want me to just read it? Go ahead, Jeff.
I can unmute. There's a little background noise. I was just curious. So for filming, how many people do you have? Is it tens, 20s, hundreds?
I mean, we try and keep our crews smaller than that, especially if you're doing anything that, you know, the kind of things that I was doing where I was doing those projections, we would try and keep it smaller. I would say we would have like 10 to 15 people. But you want to keep it smaller because the more people you have doing things like that, the more attention you're going to draw to yourself. And so in my parts of filming Racing Extinction, the goal was to not draw attention to ourselves. So when you're filming, you know, I guess on a set where you're doing like an interview and it's just somebody off screen, like for the new film, I've been the interviewer I'm off camera. But you know, you need a couple of camera operators, you need a director of photography, you need the director, you need the person doing the interviews, you need electricians, you need people setting up lighting, you need the sound guy. So it, you know, it does end up being, if you want to make it look beautiful, which, you know, working with Louis, he does take a long time to set up and make things look great. But I mean, that's one of the reasons you get these beautiful images. You know, you're going to end up, I'd say when I was shooting stuff for the Great Filter, where it wasn't us trying to get away, you know, we were usually under 10 people. And one thing that we didn't talk about, I don't think, in Racing Extinction, which I thought was cool, is our whole set for all of filming Racing Extinction was vegan. So we would cater all of the food being brought in for the crew was all vegan. Even though not all of our crew was vegan, they were vegan when they were on the set.
Well, that's one of the things we were proud of last year's event was when we got Beyond Meat to do the truck for the dinner, about a year ago, right? We had the Beyond Meat truck,
Right.
and that's all we had. And, I can tell you in the planning for the event last year, it was still controversial because you got a lot of folks that are truly carnivores, and some of them came back and said, "Hey, that wasn't bad at all." They still went to steak afterwards, but you know what? Hey, try it, see what happens. I mean, I actually prefer at home. I actually prefer the Beyond Meat burgers that they make easily. I mean, I just get them at Costco. They're awesome, and look, I watch Racing Extinction because you said you had a Model S in it, and I'm like, oh yeah, go watch that. That sounds like a fun thing, and it's really it's funny how a lot of the things track, but for me it was more for the mission, the Tesla mission, how it aligns with a lot of that, and you must be proud of the fact that the Model 3 and the Model Y have vegan interiors, as opposed to when you had your Model S. The vegan interior was special made for you, right? I mean, your Model S, the vegan interior wasn't available at that time.
Yeah, so the vegan interior, it was actually, the 006 was the very first P85 Plus, which back during that time, this is 2013, the vegan seats were not available unless if you bought the performance version of the car. So you could only get it in a base Model S. So 006 was the first car, and I think it was a little bit of a pain. They had to pull it off the line that it's normally on to move it over to get the non-leather seats, and then I did the same thing for my Model S. But those vegan seats were performing better than the leather seats, like in durability and feel, all of the things. The reason they made that switch is because they were able to get the vegan leather to perform better and to last longer and be more durable. I think it's so important that you get people. I love that you did the Beyond Meat truck at the Tesla Global Leadership Summit, because that's what I was doing in racing. Is I was bringing. I did the Impossible Burger, but I brought a vegan tent to 5 of my races. We gave away 30,000 vegan cheeseburgers. So we were doing the Impossible Burger. I had a vegan chef from LA cooking everything. We had bodybuilders and all these vegan athletes at my tent helping me give away these burgers to the race fans. We did 30,000 of them. And a lot of the people, of course, that came to our tent were meat eaters. And, I guess in some respects I was unique because I was one of the few female drivers in the sport. So they were curious to come over and talk to me. And then, of course, then I would give them a burger for free. And there were tons of people coming back for seconds and thirds and fourths. And I remember when I was racing at Pocono, Pennsylvania, at Pocono Raceway, the NASCAR media guy, his whole job is taking pictures for NASCAR of the race weekend and what's going on in the stands and with the fans. And it was funny because they set up my vegan strong tent, and directly next to us was like the Johnsonville meat tent, and they were completely empty. I did a panoramic because it was so funny, because my tent had consistently 30 people in line waiting for our vegan cheeseburgers, and the Johnsonville one was just completely empty. Nobody was there. They were trying to play music and bring people in, and nobody was there. And the NASCAR media guy said, "I just want to let you know you are by far," and all I do is walk around the tent and the track and document what different sponsors are doing to reach out to our race fans, and you are by far consistently the most popular tent that we have. It's he was totally blown away. So I think it's important for that was my whole goal in the race car, was to get my issues in front of a demographic of people that they're not going to go to an environmental film festival to see Racing Extinction. It's not, you have to bring the message to people where they are. And so in your case, bringing Beyond Meat to a Tesla meetup, knowing that a lot of those people weren't vegan. And I think I remember somebody mentioning to me, and perhaps it was you, that people at first, when they heard about it, were actually upset about it. And,
well, we brought people in from all over the world, and some some of the cultures are a lot more heavy meat eaters than, look, I grew up in California, so I'm used to the diversity of everything, right? So it's good to try it. I mean, I tend to try things more than once before I say, okay, I like it or I don't like it. And, I figure if I eat it more than weeks on time, then, I probably do like it. You don't get to my size without eating something. Stuart had a question that tied into the vegan question better. Stuart, if you wanted to unmute and talk, feel free, or we can just answer it.
Sure. Obviously, being a vegan, what is your take on these products like Beyond Meat, and those coming now more into the mainstream? My sister's a vegetarian, and she's tried all these different recipes and stuff. So whenever I go to hers, it's good food. It's not like I'm not going to eat it, but I feel that the Beyond Meat is trying to aim towards us meat eaters. And I just want to get your opinion on those kind of things.
Yeah, so I have to be honest. I'm a junk food vegan. I mean, I definitely eat my fair share of the healthy stuff, but I have vegan pizza and vegan burritos and vegan mac and cheese and vegan ice cream and all of the sort of junk food that anybody can get as a meat eater. I have the same thing in my fridge, and my freezer, but it's a vegan version. So we do sausages. We like the Beyond Meat sausages. We do grill outs with hamburgers. We eat all of that sort of decadent, I would call it comfort food. And I think, I grew up in Minnesota, and my father's from Germany. My mother is born and raised in Hawaii, and I loved eating like mac and cheese as a kid. So I was really excited when I could get vegan mac and cheese and vegan fondue and all those things. And I think that's so important because people don't, could you imagine if I showed up at the NASCAR track at Daytona, I was trying to give people like kale salad? I mean, I would have gotten kicked out of the racetrack. Like, I mean, you just can't do that. You have to show people, look, I'm not asking you to give up your burger. I'm just saying, like, try this one that's made out of plants instead of made out of a dead animal, and I think you'll be surprised at how good it was. And we did it right too. We had the vegan cheddar cheese from Follow Your Heart melted over it. We had the vegan dressing, the Thousand Island dressing on top. We had lettuce and tomato, and the buns that we used were the pretzel buns, and they were toasted with like Miyoko's vegan butter on it. So like we made it super good. We didn't cut any corners. We spent, I gave up quite a few races. I could have run a full season and like run for the championship, but I chose instead to run fewer races so that I could have and spend that money instead on the vegan tent and making these great burgers and giving them away, because I knew driving around the track with a vegan on the hood of my race car raises awareness, but until I could get people to actually like taste it and be like, huh, that's really good. That actually tastes normal, like a burger. I could eat that. And they start to realize that I'm not going to be giving up flavor. I'm just going to be switching the product that I buy, much in the same way like Tesla did that for cars, right? You're not giving up speed. You're not giving up performance. You're not giving up sexiness of how the car looks. And you're getting all those things, and you're doing it without burning any fossil fuels. So you offer the same result without asking people to give anything up. And if you can make it even better, perfect. So, we did that. It was really effective. I mean, I had race fans come through my tent at Daytona in 2017 and then come through my tent again in 2018 and say, I've been vegan since I went through your tent last year at this time. And, I mean, the number of people that it changed just by giving those burgers away was incredible, because I, heard back from a lot of them through social media. So that's such a key thing, is you can't just preach to the choir, right? I feel like right now we're all EV owners, we're all Tesla owners, we're sort of on board already with the movement. So in some ways, this discussion is preaching to the choir as far as electric cars go. But it is so important for us to get out and talk to people that don't agree with us. Because if you just run around, talking to people who agree with you, then nothing will ever change.
Well, it's just that echo chamber, right? And nothing really. Yeah, that's why I hate the block function on Twitter. I mean, I don't know how I find myself on some of these block lists, but look, if you have I'd rather people block me individually than just as part of a group, because I do want to hear what other people have to say. And sometimes I'm lucky and I'm not famous like you are, where stupid people, a lot more stupid people come in on it, and you have to use your own block thing. But I do want to have a conversation, which is why I'm on it. But sometimes, like you said, I like some of your tweets today with when you find people that are supporters of the current occupant of the White House and how you respond, and I appreciate some of those things.
Yeah,
but
I'm in a swing state, so every vote matters here, and things get pretty contentious in North Carolina because we're always a swing state. We go back and forth. So I don't really have the luxury of being quiet. And that has spilled over, and I kind of find myself pretty annoyed by people that are Tesla owners and Tesla enthusiasts, and then they're voicing support for Trump when he's systematically been tearing down environmental protections, selling off public lands that are homes to endangered species to oil and gas companies. He's been tearing down the Endangered Species Act. I mean, he's consistently on the wrong side of history. He won't, admit that climate change is caused by man. He consistently puts people into positions of power in his administration that are climate change deniers. I mean, he is not a friend to the environment. So I guess in my mind, I always think that EV owners are really conscious about those things. So it kind of upsets me even more when I see somebody that's like a Tesla enthusiast or an owner, like voicing support for him. I just can't, those two things do not go together in my head. So yeah, I may have snapped a little bit last night, and I retweeted one of the MAGA Tesla owners and just said, if you're a Trump supporter, because I'm so sick of I'm shocked at how many Tesla owners actually are pro-Trump. Just unfollow me. Stop messaging me. Like I'm done. The hypocritical. This administration has just been an absolute disaster, and so it makes me lose a little bit of hope in seeing how many people that seemingly I would give credit as being putting science first and believing the data and believing in climate change and wanting to protect our environment, and yet they're voicing publicly that they support Trump at the same time that they're driving a Tesla around and putting solar on their roof. And I just can't reconcile those two things. And I snapped a little bit last night about that. And, I'm censoring myself less and less these days as we get closer to the election.
I understood that bringing you on, Leilani. I mean, we do have Orange County historically has been a stronghold for the Republican Party in California. We're like the Austin is to Texas as Orange County typically is to California.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I mean, Orange County historically has been a stronghold for the Republican Party for the state of California.
In 2004. We had the highest vote margin of any county in the United States for Bush.
Whoa, I had no idea.
In the entire, that's by number, not by percentage. Which basically means we're the largest Republican county. We had the largest gap in terms of number of Democrat versus number of Republican votes. And now we have 7 out of 7 of our representatives are Democrats.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
In 2018, and all the representatives in the House flipped to Democrat at the time. I mean, there was actually a candidate that our friend Bonnie had told us about. We had a meetup with that was part of Tesla's policy team that didn't make it through the Democratic primaries, but we had a meetup with him as well. Sam, I forgot Sam's last name, but he was going to represent, or was trying to go for Fullerton at the time, and it was a nice guy. I mean, he had some good ideas. I mean, yeah, Sam Jamal. Thank you, Mercedes and Terry. You guys were at the meetup. Sam Jamal was he would have been your representative had he been had he gone for it, I guess, or had he made it through the primaries. but yeah, no, I understand you're a person that speaks your mind, and that's why we love you. We can agree on a lot of things.
I printed my own yard sign this year, and I'm north of Charlotte, North Carolina. As I said, we're purple. We go back and forth, and I mean, I remember in 2008 and 2012, my Obama signs kept getting stolen. And I've had nothing but thumbs up from all my neighbors that are walking by. My yard sign says, "Grab him by the ballot," hashtag vote him out. And both women and men are walking by, do a lot of sidewalk chalk art outside my house. And so I've been outside quite a bit. Gets me out of the house in quarantine. And I haven't had one negative reaction from anyone, and I was surprised. I sort of drove around my neighborhood just out of curiosity, and all the signs that I saw were Biden signs. So I'm fairly, I don't want to get confident because obviously what happened in 2016, yes. But I'm fairly confident that it's going to swing the right way this year. I'm just nervous about whether or not he will accept it, and what happens if he doesn't, and how that how that's going to go down.
Well, being a Filipino,
North Carolina also has a very recent history of Republicans stealing elections in North Carolina.
Right. Yep. They got caught collecting people's ballots. Yeah.
They're doing that in Orange County too.
Well,
really?
they put those. Well, that's all throughout the state, right? The official ballot boxes that are not. I can tell you, being a Filipino American, and when I was a kid, it was during martial law in the Philippines, and it's really part of the reason why I make sure that once I was old enough to vote, I exercised that. I can't always say that I follow what the Democratic ballot would be, because I'm actually a registered Republican, but I can tell you that I typically vote my conscience and what tracks with. Even when it hurts my pocketbook, as my Democratic best friend likes to tell me. But at times I do go the other direction. Though I'm not I'm not one to share much more than that. I mean, obviously I'm not a political. You see my threads.
I think.
However,
I think humanity is more important than money. So.
Yes, I agree 100%, which is why I'm in clean technology. And additionally, if you look at it purely on a financial focus, a lot of things now, clean tech, and I'm sure you've seen the latest statistics, but solar power itself is, if you're just going to purely look at it as economics, solar power itself is a very powerful and cheaper way of generating electricity than any fossil fuels now. And that was worldwide. So, if we were just going to look at it purely for self-interest reasons, those are the sort of things that can be there. And that's where we can all go together, right? It's a helpful kind of thing. And I appreciate that. That's kind of the way those things are. And, like I said, that if you can't see that on any of those things, then that's where it is. And I think, Alistair, we kind of answered your question from earlier on chat on there. At least Leilani did, and we'll see.
I saw that question.
So, Scotland, there's more the renewables than not. Talking about the future and like, one of the things that obviously you're working on your own film. You've talked about the Sir David Attenborough one, and by the way, we're hitting an hour now. So, do you have a few more minutes with us, Leilani, or?
Yeah, I'm in no rush.
Okay.
It's quarantine. I don't have anywhere to go.
Well, we don't want to suck up all your time, so and I'll make sure you get enough rest. I don't know if you're staying up with Craig tonight, but I've been tweeting at him, letting him know where to watch the All Blacks at 8 o'clock Pacific, 11 o'clock Eastern on
Absolutely,
ESPN.
Yep. It'll start at 10:50, and I never miss the haka at the beginning.
There you go. Yeah, mine goes on at 7:55, right? It's when it's at. But yeah, so are there any other films that you that you have that think could help, expand the discussion to interested parties that are on here that may want to watch that?
I saw one just a couple of weeks ago called My Octopus Teacher. That's on Netflix. And actually, that's my pick for Best Doc in the Oscars. I think it was phenomenally done. It's a very emotional, beautiful story. It touched me. I don't think anything will ever top The Cove for me. The Cove remains my favorite documentary film of all time, and that will probably never change. But I think Octopus Teacher came really close. And that's a Netflix exclusive, so it's on Netflix. Chasing Coral is another beautiful film that a friend of mine, Jeff Orlowski, made. He also made a film before that called Chasing Ice. And he has a new film out right now that's actually about social media. That's called The Social Dilemma. That's also on Netflix, and sort of interviews a lot of the people in big tech that built platforms like Facebook and Google and Instagram, and talk about how those platforms were built really to get you addicted to them, and just the divisiveness. Sort of, it's a little bit about how we're all choosing what we see on social media, and in some respects, this ties into the question that somebody made a comment about blocking people on Twitter, the mute button and the block button. I try to use the mute button more than the block button, and I try and use that really sparingly. But it's interesting to think about how we're all sort of, I'm following climate change scientists, and I'm following comedians, and I'm following people that a lot of the people that I'm following, of course, are people that are on the same page as me. And so the film is talking about a little bit how we're all kind of living in our own Truman Show, right? We're picking what we want to see when we open our feeds, and how that has in some way, perhaps sown division because we're in our own little echo chambers and we're not speaking to the people who don't agree with us. So it's an interesting one. I also like The Great Hack, which is about the Cambridge Analytica scandal and 2016 and Facebook's role in that. That was when I actually left Facebook a year ago this month. I left when they made Breitbart a trusted news source. Breitbart is, this far right-wing, white nationalist kind of, white supremacist kind of leaning news organization, and Facebook, October of last year, made them a trusted news source. And that was kind of the final straw for me. I was like, I'm done. It was hard for me to leave because I actually had more followers there than anywhere else. I had like 55,000 people on my Facebook page. So I knew I was kind of giving up my ability to talk to them about the vegan strong tent, things like that. But I had retired from racing after Daytona last year in February. So, I had to walk away from that. I also deleted WhatsApp from my phone. I now use Signal instead. Trying my best to de-Zuckerberg my life. The only thing that I still have is Instagram. I haven't, if any of you guys have suggestions on how to replace sort of a photo album, there's not really, I feel like, a replacement social media-wise for...
I'm on the older version of that. I still use a Flickr account to store all my photos.
But can you interact with people on, like, are people...
Well, the problem is there's nobody on
it.
It's really bad. The Flickr is. So TikTok, but it's not really photo, it's videos, right?
Yeah, I guess I like Instagram because it feels like a photo album, and yeah. I've had phones destroyed, and there's pictures that are up on my Instagram that I don't have the original of. All I have of it is on my Instagram, and I haven't been able to delete that one. That's my last like Zuckerberg owned account. But anyways, we're sort of getting off topic. Sorry.
Yeah, no, well, Dean Fielding, you take it for our British friends that are joining us here to use the hand raise function, but I think that means he's got a question. So Dean, you're up if you've got a question.
Yeah.
Or you have your hand raised just for that. Oh, wait, before
I've got a few questions.
I want to congratulate you on behalf of everyone and make it public that you and looks like Alexander's joined us. We have 2/3 of the guys that now hold the record from Lance and to John O'Groats, who broke that record a few weeks ago in a Tesla Model 3. So, good job, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. No, that was a great event. We'll I'll put something on Twitter with the news article so you can look at the details of that if you like. It was quite an epic thing, really. There'll be some more info on that later in the year. But I had a few questions really. I'll start with obviously. Well, I think the two questions actually link with each other, so I'll just say them both first. One's more a statement, but the first one is, what do you think is the single biggest impact thing that we can do to try and combat climate change? And the second kind of statement, if you like, is how do we make people change? And I know that can sound quite forceful, but at a personal level, I'm seeming to get to this kind of just like rock solid resistance from people to change. Like, perfect example, family member, mother-in-law, just bought in the market for a new car, looked at a Kia Soul and went and bought a petrol one. Bearing in mind, she knows everything I've ever told her about electric cars. We've had electric cars for ages. She's even got solar panels. She never uses motorways. She only does, she was like the prime candidate for it. And she's paid the same price that she could have bought an electric one for. And she still didn't do it. And there seems to be this huge block that some people seem to have. And my sister was the same. And I don't know, I feel quite guilty because I'm like, I'm doing a rubbish job of converting people to electric cars because I don't know, there just seems to be this strong resistance. So, one, what's the most important thing that you think, Leilani, that we can do to combat climate change? And two, how can we get people to change? It's a really hard thing, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think carbon footprint wise, the biggest thing you can do is not bringing another human into the world. If you're looking purely at your impact on the planet, carbon dioxide wise, that's the #1 way. Close behind, I would say changing your diet and eliminating meat and dairy products from your plate. Of course, everybody here is already supportive of electric cars and renewable energy, so that's a big part of it. Those are the 3 things that I think I talk about the most: is EVs, solar, electric cars, and I've only recently in the last couple of years starting to become very vocal about the population issue, just because that's the one that tends to make people sort of squirm in their seats. But I feel like the more we talk about it, the more acceptable it'll be to talk about it, and the more normal it'll be for women to make that choice, and for it to be acceptable for us to make that choice, and us not be told that we're being selfish, or that it becomes more of an accepted discussion to have in society. As far as like how you make people change, I mean, I studied a lot of this when I was trying to do my outreach, especially when I did the vegan car. We actually had a marketing company. It was one of the only times that I had a big marketing company kind of helping me with messaging in NASCAR. And they did a big study to see what is it that makes people change. And of course, it was the things that I wasn't talking about, right? I'm always talking about the animals and the planet because that's the reason that I went vegan. So of course, that's what I'm going to talk about, what I'm going to tweet about. That's what I care about. And overwhelmingly, between my 2017 vegan powered race car, which was talking about all the reasons to go vegan, world hunger, environmental impact, animal cruelty, and your health, overwhelmingly, the study actually showed that the #1 reason why people make the switch from either vegetarian to vegan or full-on meat eater to vegan was for their health, whether it be to avoid like all of the antibiotics and hormones that are going into the factory farmed animals, or whether it was, they had heart disease or they had diabetes and they were trying to, just get healthier. So that made us completely change the race car. And when I came back in 2018, the car was branded Vegan Strong. We only talked about health. I had to learn to talk about the least. I mean, as I said before, I'm a junk food vegan a lot of the time. I had to talk about the thing that I care least about, and not the reason why I went vegan, but because it was more effective in reaching people, I had to learn that language. And the study actually showed that once people made the switch for their health and they realized that they could still have all the cravings, all the kinds of foods that they wanted, they weren't giving much up, then they are open to hearing the ethical argument about the environment and the animals, but they're not really open to that in the beginning. And, I think one of the reasons being is that it sort of makes them feel guilty, right? If your argument is based in the ethics and you're saying you're not being ethical, you're supporting animal cruelty, you're supporting, the rainforest getting torn down for pasture land, you're turning them away because they feel criticized, they feel defensive, and they feel guilty about it. So that's why you don't want to approach people with that kind of an argument, at least for the veganism side. On the side of the electric cars, I mean, I'm shocked, yes, because, I consider you a fantastic advocate for electric cars, so I'm kind of shocked that you're...
I do my best.
It's
surprising. I do my best, but it's surprising the close friends and family and things that are still so resistive, and neighbours on my street that have just spent £60,000 on a brand new diesel SUV. And there's loads of them. I don't know, you just why can people not see what's going on? It's
I think this is a major, it's a flaw in humanity, right? We oftentimes just look short-term things, and we're creatures of habit. And one of the things that that has been shown in studies is that people are more likely to change their behavior based on emotion than they are based on facts and scientific data and sort of the cold PDF presentation of this is why an electric car is better. Emotion is what drives people to change, and that's why in our films you'll see in Racing Extinction, we try and identify and make people see a specific creature, like the last frog, the last Rabsfringillum tree frog that has since passed away and his species went extinct. There's something different about when you have a direct attachment to one specific animal. So Cecil the lion is a great example of that, right? Lions are being killed left and right for trophy hunting every single day. But because people knew Cecil, because Cecil the lion had a name, because he was famous and he was known and people were aware of him, when he got shot by that idiot dentist from Minnesota, he touched people in a way that another lion that's just like Cecil, is getting killed all the time, but people don't pay attention. So it's really important to try and reach people emotionally, and emotionally people will react stronger if they feel some sort of an emotional connection to a specific animal than they will if we're just talking about how many species have been blinking off the planet, for the last 50 years. I don't know how to make people emotional about electric cars. You've got to find, I mean, I am not against using guilt as a means to change people. And with the vegan thing, I kind of learned that wasn't the best route to go. But I do also feel like making people feel guilt is a super strong emotion, right? And so for me, I don't think it's a bad thing for you to make the argument based on look, you're leaving the world a worse place than you would if you would have made this other choice. I also feel like people don't listen to their family. When somebody's close to you, you kind of tend to dismiss them a little bit easier than I think you would if they were hearing it from somebody that's outside of their immediate family circle. It doesn't make sense. Really, you should be more open to people that are close to you, but for some reason people are not, and I don't quite understand why that is.
There
But I
must
wonder
be
if
something
you
in
could,
human psychology about that.
Yeah, I wonder if you could reach out to, I mean, I guess it's too late now. They've already bought their cars, but I wonder if it would have been effective to, like, instead of you trying to lobby them, could you have, like, reached out to somebody who you know they look up to and value their opinion, and
Yeah,
ask
maybe
them to have the talk
that's a good
for
strategy.
you? That's what I'm doing with politics. Like, I'm talking directly to people I know, but I also know they're dismissing me because they, are close to me. So I'm asking other people in the circle that are influential and I know they listen to, and I'm saying, look, I already had the talk. I think it would make a difference if you had the talk because they listen to you. So you kind of have to, sometimes go behind their backs.
That's a great message.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. The most ironic
I
thing
don't really
is that,
have an answer for it. Sorry.
no, that's fine. It's just a really interesting topic to discuss. The biggest irony of it is that she comes over to our house in her petrol car, leaves her petrol car there, and borrows the Renault Zoe because she prefers it.
So did you confront her on this and say why? Why did you do this?
She just hasn't got an answer. Yeah, I don't know.
well, the fuel costs in the UK are so much more expensive than there in California or in North
Exactly.
Carolina, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but
it blows my mind.
yeah.
So crazy. I'm so sorry, Dean. That's awful.
No, I know. It's fine.
But-
She's family. I'll not abandon her just yet. So.
Well, two Thanksgivings ago, Thanksgiving of 2018, we had Thanksgiving at our house for both sides of the family, and at least each family unit came over with an EV. So I had installed, just for that occasion years ago, the thought that if we ever get everybody over, I need, several plugs for everybody to plug in case they wanted to just plug in, because I'm generating solar anyway. So we created 6 plugs, but we were only able to plug 5 in because the physical space that a car takes, you couldn't get to one of the plugs. But that Thanksgiving, everyone that came over, at least one member of the family unit came in with an EV, and in going back to the psychology of things, I wasn't a gearhead. I'm not a car guy. I wasn't, which is funny that I'm here, helping run the Orange County Tesla Club for years until EVs, right? And my brother-in-law, who is a car guy, they're already in their second EV in the house, but he keeps waiting on Teslas. I think part of it is the reason that is because I've kind of claimed it already, and because he knows more about cars than I do, he's going to get something other. So they had an e-Golf, and now they drive the Kia Niro EV, I think is what it is, or the Hyundai Ioniq EV. I don't remember, one of the Korean ones, which are really good cars, but I think it's the psychology of having someone in the family who talks about it a lot, that you're not going to give them satisfaction over family meal to say, oh, you finally went with it. Of course, it helps
Right.
In the family dynamics that my sister-in-law and her husband, who are younger, they now have both an S and a 3. They got rid of the last their last ICE car a year and a half ago. But the younger ones are usually smarter than us anyway, so that's what ends up happening.
That's true.
So I mean, and to me, it's it took a while, but we at least have one EV for each member of the family, so that's one thing to do. And if you provide them with free plug-in when they come over, maybe that'll help. Were you charging your mother-in-law for plugging in if she was going to come over, Dean? Maybe that's it.
Certainly not. Yeah. It's. I think. I mean, fortunately, I've managed to convert plenty of people to EVs, but it's just really. I've really noticed this last 6 to 12 months. There seems to be a really kind of stubborn group barrier with a lot of people, and I think it's not just people that I know, just across the population, that are still buying self-charging hybrids and diesel engines, and they're just not accepting it yet. And maybe that will all change in another 6 to 12 months, and then suddenly everybody will want an electric car and want to be in on it, and the transition will happen really fast and it'll start to accelerate. But yeah, it's just something I'm noticing out there right now. I just quickly want to thank you, Leilani, as well. And I think it's really important that you're making all these subjects more acceptable to talk about, and choosing to be child-free, which I'm guilty of not being child free myself, unfortunately, but we've certainly decided to not have any more. Yeah, it's just great that someone's kind of gives people the confidence to be able to say, look, we're doing this for a reason, and it's yeah, just gives people confidence that it's something that's okay to talk about. So thanks for starting that out. And,
Thank you.
I think you were the first person that I heard talk about that. So yeah, thanks for your work.
I got a lot of people, people got really angry about that when I first started to talk about it, but I feel like maybe my years in racing have given me sort of a thick skin, and I've been able to more easily let things roll off my shoulders. Not always, but it's definitely made me sort of be able to handle a lot of criticism. And if I can't, if it gets too crazy, then I just mute the thread.
Yeah.
Self-preservation.
That's it. You've got to look after yourself.
They give you good tools, you use them. So
Yes.
we're at an hour and a half, Leilani. I don't know what your timing is, but some of the folks are saying goodbye to you on chat. So I hope you're seeing that. And someone just said hi. You joined us late. Ellie from Scotland's on here, so she's electric on Twitter. And Tesla said goodbye. So that's Penny from our club that said goodbye.
Hi,
yeah. So,
well, it was great to spend some time with you all, and I appreciate you all watching Racing Extinction, and hopefully maybe sharing your start with one thing online. I mean, I have to say, whenever I'm feeling sort of depressed, I'll pull up the hashtag start with one thing from the movie and see that we are really having an effect and people are changed by the film. So I'd love it if you guys would share that online. It gives me hope when I'm feeling down about the world and humanity.
well, we definitely will do that. And maybe I'll switch over to impossible one instead of my usual. Okay, I'm having my Beyond Meat again. But thank you for joining us today, and obviously thanks for being good friends for us. And we really appreciate you joining and sharing your time with us. It's like as we wrap up, go All Blacks. But that's more for the rugby fans in the crowd. And thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great to see you all.